Wastong pag-iingat, ang virus hindi kakalat. COVID-19, kayang-kaya nating tapusin.
We are now on YouTube. Watch all of our live episodes plus exclusive content
Kaya-kaya
in our
nating
channel
tapusin.
at radyo-katipunan FM. Don't forget to click subscribe and hit the bell to get the latest updates. Radyo Katipunan. News, insights, inspiration. Radyo Katipunan. Down from the hill and down to the world. Radyo Katipunan. The voice of the Blue Eagle.
Jescom Music Ministry, your daily dose of inspiration. Follow jescom.ph on Spotify and Jescom Music on YouTube. We are also on iTunes and Deezer.
Palalimin ang kamalayan sa mga isyong napapanahon. Makisangkot at makiisa kasama ang simbahang lingkod ng bayan. Ang Socio-Political Apostolate ng Kapisanan ni Jesus. Ito ang Kwentuhang Bayan mula alas 11 ng umaga tuwing Biyernes dito lang sa Radyo Katipunan 87.9 FM. Dahil naniniwala kami na posible ang isang mas mabuting lipunan at maaari itong simulan sa isang kwentuhan.
Get your daily dose of inspiration through our music. Follow Jescom.ph on Spotify and Jescom Music in YouTube.
Radyo Katipunan 87.9 FM.
The fire we reported at the fire hall is still burning out of...
Do you sometimes feel confused or lost in the complications and complexities of life? Do you feel drained, listless, or exhausted from the daily burdens and responsibilities? Why not seek our campus ministers on air every Tuesday from 2 to 3 in the afternoon? Listen to our counselors from the Loyola School's Campus Ministry Office as they ground our lives in our faith, in our school's spiritual tradition. Campus Ministers on Air. Be guided, be inspired, be blessed. Listen to our Campus Ministers on Air. Radyo Katipunan 87.9 FM. We are now on YouTube. Watch all of our live episodes plus exclusive content in our channel at Radyo Katipunan FM. Don't forget to click subscribe and hit the bell to get the latest updates.
Just with Music Ministry, your daily dose of inspiration. Follow jescom.ph on Spotify and Jescom Music on YouTube. We are also on iTunes and Deezer.
Radyo Katipunan. News, insights, inspiration. Radyo Katipunan. Down from the hill and down to the world. Radyo Katipunan. The voice of the Blue Eagle.
Radyo, 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 katipunan. Radyo, katipunan. Radyo, katipunan. Radyo, 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 katipunan. Radyo, katipunan. The voice of the Blue Eagle, kami di mapipigil sa pagbabalitang tumpak at tama. Buhay atin sa labas ng eskwela, ating ibibida lahat ng eskwela. Radyo, radyo, katipunan. Radyo, radyo, katipunan. Radyo, katipunan. Radyo, Kawal ni Ignacio, katipunero sugo. Todo sa kayod, tunong at tulong. Lipad na Blue Eagle, galing hiding at tigil.
This is your stop for all things pop. Catch our all-around pop culture geek, Cholo Sediaren, as he throws in some dose of what's poppin' and what's hot in the pop culture scene here on Popcorn. Munch in with us every Thursdays from 4 to 6, only here on radyo-katipunan 87.9 FM.
This is annoying, like, Zoom.
Wait, it's asking for our consent and everything.
Oh, yeah, true.
I know, right?
Thanks,
Buti
man.
pa yung Zoom. Wow.
Thanks, Zoom. Yeah, Mark.
Thanks,
Who's
Alright,
Mark?
okay.
Zuckerberg.
Oh, right. Who's Mark?
Mark.
Play a game.
Mark.
Okay. So 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. What's poppin', and welcome to Popcorn, your stop for all things pop, where we talk about all things pop culture from here in the Philippines to the rest of the globe. So the voice may be a little bit different today, guys, and that's because I am taking over today's podcast. I may not be Miss Marvel, but I am Miss Likes to Talk a lot about Marvel. I'm Paola Molina, and I'll be taking over today for Cholo Sediaren. And I'm really excited to talk about Black Widow and Loki today. But of course, I am very, very lucky to be joined by all of my amazing co-hosts today. Of course, Cholo is still here. We wouldn't have the podcast without him. Hi, Cholo.
No, I'm just a variant right now. Co-host variant, not the main host variant. But thanks, Paula, and everyone for being here. Yeah, we're always so excited to have a Marvel episode. And joining us, Paula, are...
Yeah, so we have Sel with us again today. Yay! Sel! We have Burns coming back as well.
Hello.
Do check, represent.
Yes, our verified Twitter personality is here today. We also have Dren joining.
Oh, that's me. Hi.
Mysterious.
And Richard is coming back as well after quite some time.
Yes.
Yeah. The Rock.
Yeah. And a special guest coming all the way from LA. It is 7 a.m. where he is. Thank you so much, RJ, for joining us today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Slight correction, Las Vegas.
Oh,
Mali
I
pala.
see.
I'm so sorry.
Okay,
Same,
that was the
same time
variant.
zone. Same time zone.
Oh, is it? Okay.
All right.
From
all right.
LA to LV, real quick.
Real quick. Okay, so how's everybody doing? It's early where RJ is. It's pretty late where we are, guys. Alive naman after like your respective work days.
Have we
or
ever
something.
been alive? That's true.
Oh, no.
The answer is But okay, in any case, so with all of the Marvel stuff happening now, you know, we went a whole year without any Marvel content, and now it's like we're getting it nonstop. It's like one after the other. Are you guys getting tired of it already,
Oh,
or do you kind of still feel that hype?
Not at all.
Nope.
Maybe just a bit, but dude, I'm gonna keep watching. I'm not gonna stop.
Not gonna stop
Not
you
gonna
guys
stop.
from doing.
Parang
I mean, it's
ano,
been 2 years. Yeah.
Parang compared to like the Arrowverse, which has become so tiring after a while, the MCU has found ways to like become fresh enough for you to want to keep watching. So
That's true.
it's that they put something in.
It's diversity.
Maybe, yeah.
All hail Kevin Feige. Like he just, I don't know. I'm so in awe of that man. But that's good. I mean, it's nice that even with all of the content, there's still as much excitement for all of these Marvel things as there was like, before the pandemic. So let's discuss a little bit about like the two characters, the main characters that we'll be talking about on today's show, Loki and Natasha Romanoff, Black Widow. So since their introductions in the MCU respectively in the first Thor film and Iron Man 2, how have you guys felt about these characters? Did you like them from the get-go, or was there like a little bit of a setback from you guys? What do you guys think? I can go first. I can go first. So I've been a Natasha Romanoff fan like ever since. Like she's always been just this cool like femme fatale for me. That those kinds of characters have always been like interesting to me as like a fan of Charlie's Angels and all of these like spy films growing up. Natasha Romanoff has always been like cool. And Loki, there's something about Tom Hiddleston kasi it's not necessarily the character. I think it's really Tom Hiddleston that really like locked me in. Because if I were just to look at Loki as a character at the start of the franchise, the Marvel franchise, he just was just like this annoying, like self-centered narcissist little brother who was like super insecure of Thor with good reason naman. Pero it just didn't seem like the kind of written character that I would be rooting for the way that I root for Loki today. So it was very nice to see like how his character developed over the MCU films. And the same with Natasha, although with her I've always just been like a huge fan.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of it has to come down with how Scarlett Johansson and Tom Hiddleston specifically managed to portray the characters.
Yeah.
It's more like with Hiddleston, it's more of, Loki's going to be the guy who eventually has to do all of these big villain monologues like, I am a god, you dull creature, and I will not be bullied by so on and so forth. And then it's the specific charm of him being able to deliver it in like a snide yet like sort of really charismatic way. And with Widow, I feel like Scarlett Johansson finally, like, there's a dryness. Her charm's more dry, deadpan. But also, like, I guess that's where I find the appeal for both Loki and Widow is how those two actors specifically deliver it. Aside from that, I don't necessarily have like the strongest connections to either Loki or Widow. Aside from the fact I think they're really good, and there's obviously part of the cornerstones of the MCU. So there's that.
What I can say is that I feel like Marvel did a really great job sprinkling in all the foundations before giving them their own shows. Like even with Wanda and Bucky and Sam, parang they were always there and we always rooted for them. But now that they have their own things, parang it just adds on to whatever love we have for them and really getting deeper into their psyche and what they came from and what their motivations are, kind of gives us more to love in a sense. So, I mean, for Loki, we've definitely loved an anti-hero type. I mean, parang there's always that spot for everyone, and very iconic na the parang the dynamic between the brothers, sila ni Thor, has always been there. So parang you can't not, I mean, you're right, Paula, you really can't. It's also because of the delivery, you really can't not love him even though he does questionable things. And then Natasha's the same. Parang eventually she became like the family, the mother of the Avengers in a sense. Na parang you'd always you'd always wonder where did that come from, and then seeing it in the movie, I guess we'll talk more about that later. It all makes sense, and she deserves to have her own movie once and for all.
Yeah, I was about to ask nga, like, why do you think like these two in particular made such a big impact to the fan base that they now have their own like individual highlights, a show and like a movie respectively? Like it's kind of wild to think that these characters are really just like background characters or like supporting characters in the comics, and now um they have their own stuff and they have like a huge fan base that like supports them.
I really think, like, at least for Loki, it's because of what Tom Hiddleston did with it really was because of Tom Hiddleston. Like, I grew to like Loki even more as time went past.
Mm.
Like, especially Ragnarok onwards. Like, I was like, I really loved his character. And say what you want about like the first Thor movies, it Tom Hiddleston did Loki pretty well. Like,
Oh yeah.
well, and so like for a time, like until we met, say Ultron and Killmonger, we would say Loki was our favorite Marvel villain, and that's a testament to how good an actor Tom Hiddleston is. And for Natasha, you have to give her credit na until like well, Pepper had action in Iron Man 3, but until Wanda showed up in Ultron, it was just Natasha who was the female hero, and she was what a lot of girls looked up to for a super, at least in Marvel and MCU. And wala, it just, why did it take so long for her to get credit?
Yeah.
And but at least we do get to see just how really good Scarlett Johansson is, and the way that they
As fellow
finally treat-
Asians.
But the way that how they finally treated Black Widow's character, the hero, character of Black Widow, the who Natasha Romanoff is in the Avengers family is, it feels right, and I really like what how ScarJo went about it.
I feel like, to add to the Loki point, it's also because, we all can't be Thors in our lives, and having a Loki to parang, being we're not always perfect and that poster child. So having parang the dynamic nga na Loki is like di naman lesser, but like a different,
The misfit,
the misfit person. Parang you'd hold on to that character even if they're flawed, na parang, and we only got to see more of Thor's like mga hinanakit niya eventually pa, diba? I mean, the first few movies weren't really all too compelling, at least for Thor's character, but Loki, yun nga, parang the seeds have been planted ever since the beginning.
I think to add to what Cholo said, I think both characters are very redemption arc sort of characters, in the sense that Natasha's done a lot of not great things in her past, and what she's doing now serves as a way to like make amends for that. And I think most of us really like that kind of plot line really resonates with a lot of people. And I think I really definitely agree with what everyone said, that the actors were really a big part. You can tell how much they love the character then. And that's why they pushed for them to have more, like have an individual like show or movie about them, which is really great. And I have to say, Ren, like, yes, as a Tom Hiddleston fan, I love how he used his like theater background in doing the whole Loki thing. I mean, like, honestly, guilty pleasure is watching him do like Shakespearean monologues or reading Tolstoy. Medyo nerdy, but yeah. And I really love how he brought that into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I don't think like the character would be as popular as he is now if he didn't have like Tom Hiddleston's like crazy amount of charm.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I just want to add that like one of my favorite scenes in the entirety of the first Avengers movie is Loki and Natasha's interaction.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that was, I mean, Joss Whedon doesn't do a very good job of Natasha moving forward in Age of Ultron, but that particular scene I think was really what set the tone with this character moving forward. And I don't know, it was just like a showcase of both how amazing these two actors were doing this particular scene.
True. And parang more on the Loki side, I guess that's what, for me, personally, that's what's most interesting about the Loki show. Yung parang every time he talks, it's like watching a chess battle all the time. So I always try to pay attention every time when Loki talks. Because, like at least all throughout the show, there's a lot of twists and turns with the way he parang treats people, with his intentions, his motivations. It's fun to see that all throughout them.
Pero looking back nga, to add to Paula's point, you watch Marvel Legends, the show. Ang ganda
Yeah.
nung Black Widow episode about like her journey leading up to the movie. Really, really great stuff. And you'll see that scene that she was talking about, Loki and Black Widow. And ang ganda nga, like you never really think about it until now that you like say it again and think back and look at the journey from 10 years or 11 years ago.
It's been quite a journey. And I mean, there was a point that we all thought like their journeys as characters would be at an end when they both like died in Infinity War and in Endgame. Like what did you guys feel? Spoiler alert. But like what did you guys feel when those two deaths happened? Like they occurred in like two different movies, but I think they were both like a really big impact on how the MCU went.
Parang at that point kasi may announcements na about the TV show and the movie.
In Infinity War?
Parang may may rumors na.
It was between them, after Infinity War, before Endgame.
But even with that, ako personally, like when I saw, like Loki's death was the one that hit me harder.
Yeah,
because, picking up from Ragnarok, literally everybody died. Not everybody now, but you get what I mean. And then
majority of the people.
War, yeah, when Infinity War opened, all of them died na. And then after seeing parang Loki die right there.
And saving his brother at that.
Yeah, saving his brother. I think that was like an ultimate redemption arc for him then. And wala lang. Like even if we were expecting their TV shows, it still hit hard because again we all love Tom Hiddleston as the character, and we all saw his struggle naman being parang like his struggle between being evil and like being good, and I thought that ayun, parang him sacrificing himself in that very last minute. It was very touching, and it was very like made me love him all the more. I mean, as you can see now, like when in the show, when Loki saw that specific sacrifice he did, he was thinking himself, maybe I am a good guy still. Maybe there is something something. There was a lot more to me than what I thought initially. And
yeah, especially since it came at the opening, one of the.
Yeah.
That's it.
Anyone to die at like that first few minutes of Infinity War. Like
and si Loki pa of all people, diba?
Parang,
wow, impact.
Crazy. And considering
parang it's not about the death, it's more about the act that he did.
Yeah, because he died.
That's why the deck didn't really. I didn't like we know that he was going to have a show eventually, but it was just the act of him sacrificing himself at the partner.
Yeah. Well, everybody knows how I felt about Natasha Romanoff dying. I think that was a trip for me as a person who was like, out of everybody in the original 6, Natasha Romanoff was like the last person I thought they were going to kill off, because there's so much you could do with this character, and they hadn't done anything with her like very significant as of yet. So when that whole battle of like Vormir happened, sobrang ang sakit, because I also wanted Clint not to die, but if I were to choose between the two of them, I would want to save Natasha.
No, that's true. I remember watching that scene, and then I was thinking like, oh my gosh, one of them has to die. In my head, like, do I want it to be Hawkeye? Do I want it to be Natasha? But I couldn't like decide. Like one of them has to die.
Hanggang ngayon, like when I watch Endgame, I still fast forward that scene because I can't do it. I can't watch her fall to her death, But yeah, anything else before we like get down and dirty into like
I will just reiterate for the nth time. It's just so sad that Black Widow wasn't in that money shot at Endgame final battle. Parang no, why? Yun lang.
The first like female
or at
superhero.
least no callback then to the mention of her or something. I don't know.
I don't know if I'm preempting the Black Widow discussion, but as much as I'm not sure if I would agree na like Hawkeye deserved it more naman. But then the thing is, like when Natasha died and the whole reasoning behind it was that Hawkeye had a family to go back to. I thought that was really narratively strange kasi she was built up as the person who kept the Avengers as a family together. And then you would you would choose a life over her because he has a family to go back to. I was like, parang that doesn't make any sense. So ayun, other than my personal feelings, I'm like, why would you kill off this character? Like what Paula said, you haven't done much with. I felt like it narratively felt really flat to me also.
Parang predictable.
There's nothing behind it. I would understand it more if like Natasha did it because she didn't want her friend to die. As in like kahit ganun lang siya ka-base level, that would have been more like acceptable to me than like Natasha being less deserving to live because she didn't have like a biological family of her own or like children and stuff.
It felt like a weird continuation from that whole thing in Ultron that she couldn't have children.
Ay nako, let's
something I would never ever agree with.
Oh no.
That whole like Bruce, the fact that she was like comparing herself to the Hulk as a monster because she couldn't have children. What?
Ridiculous.
But anyway, let's gloss over Ultron because I hated what they did with the character there.
Moving away from the Ultron.
Moving.
I think I'm the only one like here that I was actually tired of the Marvel stuff. That's why I was really quiet, and you guys were like, "Yeah, I was still super excited," because I was like, I wasn't excited because I guess that's a good thing, because I'll just be the devil's advocate, I guess. But I think when it comes to the MCU, sorry, di ako naka-chime in sa everything, so I'll just try to condense what I was going to say. But I think that the reason why they're so beloved, these two characters, is because I feel like there was like this expectation in the beginning, and I feel like in the beginning it was always like, okay, MCU like has this thing where they kind of give all their side stories, a little bit of love. And for the longest time, these two never got any love, and it like slowly built up over the years, where eventually it got to the point like, okay, what the hell? this is getting ridiculous. Na kahit si Rhodey mas maganda yung backstory kaysa, di ba? Parang no offense to Rhodey, but it's just like, bro, like why does it seem like the MCU doesn't like these characters? That's honestly what it felt like to me at one point, and it was really frustrating because like they're played by these two really, really. The Marvel does a really good job. I think Cell said something along the lines of like, the casting is always really good in the MCU, and I think they do a really good job because of not only making sure that the characters are, appropriate, like they look like their counterparts, but they're like nice people. Like the Avengers family is really, really like tight, and I feel like it really showed on screen how like good, how much they loved each other and everything. So it was really frustrating seeing these two like really, really brilliant actors, watching Tom Hiddleston go and do like this Academy Award like level performance, and then he goes back to like the MCU where he's just like Mr. Monologue, and it's like, why does it feel like you could be doing more? So yeah, it's really frustrating. But on the note of like their development as characters, I think it was really jarring in Infinity War to see Loki die. Spoilers, but if you haven't seen it, like go outside of your room.
Yeah, touch some grass.
Exactly, touch some grass. That's what the kids say, right?
Yeah.
But like the thing about the Loki death, I think that really bothered me was that I feel like it was so. I feel like they were supposed to summarize like his entire character development in like this singular thing where it's like, see, he's not selfish. That was like it is just like, see, he's like nice to his brother, and in my head like, that's not really what I felt like what his character was about. I feel like to kind of simplify his character into something that's just like he's selfish is really like unfair. And I'll get more into it in the Loki series, why I actually felt kind of disappointed in the Loki series by the end, because I feel like they went away from what I wish they did again. And it was kind of the same with Black Widow, so I feel like I'm gonna be disagreeing with you guys a lot, because if you guys really, if for the people here that really, really enjoyed like the Loki series and the Black Widow film, I didn't. So yeah, let's talk about it.
Exciting to see everybody fight Dren later on.
I know. I'm just like, I leave the call. I'm sorry.
Quick question then. What was the last Marvel film that you liked?
Oh man, I like Endgame. Sorry, I say that with like such a like. I like Endgame.
No, I know. But because I get that there are some people who don't like the Marvel stuff, and I understand that. Like the way it's made, the way they do their, everything.
Yeah.
So baka you're just generally not into
That's
Marvel
true.
stuff.
Yeah. No, I think I think I do look for different things, in movies and stuff.
Dren
And
is a DC fan.
It's true.
there you
I
go.
am a
That's-
DC fan, but that's like completely. I know this suck. Sorry to the DC fans out there, but I think I do look for different things. Marvel provides something different, and I appreciate them. I think they're all really good movies. I just recognize that they're not really for me. And I guess the last one that I really, really liked, that I said like, oh, I really enjoyed it, and I think I've talked about this a little bit. Like after the movie, I legit like argued with a friend of mine, and we fought like outside the theater because it was Civil War, and I was
I
remember that.
What was I? I was Team Iron Man, and he was Team Captain America, and we like argued for like 30 minutes. Like we almost got into a screaming match outside of the cinema, and that's why I like the movie so much. So I think that was the last one I could say that I really, really liked.
Okay.
Yeah.
Richard's face.
No, because I get what he means. Kasi ako, like personally, like generally, I'm not like the biggest fans of Marvel movies anymore. But whenever I watch Marvel stuff, I always have to get my brain in like
a certain.
I always
exactly.
Like mind space.
It really is,
okay,
yeah.
this is a Marvel movie. It's an Oscar film. It's not.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they're not going for
Yeah, and I think it's like dumb that people look for those elements of like having an award-winning film.
And they say that it's like a bad movie. It's not a bad movie. It's just not your kind of movie. It's very different.
Because a lot of people have like black and white. Parang
it's like, and they
I
have
don't
this,
like movies.
I feel like, exactly. There's also like this perception, I think, that like if I don't like it, it's a bad movie, which is very different from I don't like it. And I think people need to recognize more often. It's very possible to not like something and for it to still be good.
Yeah, I don't like.
And it's also
It's
also conversely possible to like a movie, but also acknowledge that
But it's
it's
not
a bad
probably no
movie.
person either.
Exactly.
That's what guilty pleasures are.
Yeah.
Diba? Okay, but yeah, like
Well,
I don't know.
and that was Dren, the origin.
I know.
story.
I'll be back later after everyone gushes over it. I'll come in at the end like, well.
Jen's gonna work out for a bit and then like come back.
If you hear me huffing and puffing, I'll just mute myself.
But yeah, I mean, like the MCU has always been like a huge like source of debate of like film lovers everywhere, and it's funny because regardless of what you say about the MCU, it has made like a really huge impact on pop culture and like on the way that people consume their media. Like it's really a cool thing that you can have this series with so many like elements in it and everybody just understands because everybody's watched everything. It's like just part of society nowadays. And we went like 2 years without a film. So this Black Widow was like the first MCU film to come out in like 2 years. It was supposed to happen May of like 2020, but Miss Corona had to put an end to it all. But were you guys like very hyped when the Black Widow movie was announced? Is it something that you guys were really like planning to catch, or was it just one of those films na parang I could see it some other time, especially since it wasn't like playing within the immediate timeline then of the MCU films?
I wasn't gonna rush into it, but I knew I was gonna watch it eventually. I would watch it. I would have watched it in the cinemas, but it's not like Endgame. Now, okay, I have to watch it opening night.
Yeah.
But I knew na I like Black Widow enough. I like this MCU enough. I know, but I can give this enough time. Like I'll wait for a free time for me to watch it, and then I'll have a good time watching. But yeah, that's how I felt about it then, and that's how I felt about it when it finally came out.
A Marvel movie is a Marvel movie. People
Marvel,
not watch. Yeah, it's a Marvel movie.
It's a Marvel movie.
It's another episode in their huge, in their huge season, like their huge phase. You get what I mean? But I feel like no matter what happens, people will watch these things. Because you miss out on one thing. Future movies, you won't understand certain context, certain parang backstories and all that. So personally, I would never not miss a Marvel thing because just as long you're updated with like the stories, you'll better appreciate the continuity and then how they're crafting like the whole universe. And that's something also na I really appreciate parang Marvel doing, and it's something I don't want to miss out on. Seeing how they build certain things up. Yeah. So,
yeah, it's an event. Like somebody, I remember a friend describing to me like a Marvel movie is always like an event that you look forward to and that you have to be a part of, or else like you won't be able to join in like pop culture discussions on
True.
the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, go ahead, RJ.
No, I was gonna say like I had similar reactions. It was with Widow getting her own movie specifically. I had similar reaction of I'm gonna have to watch it eventually. I wasn't like mega hyped for it, but I acknowledged that okay, I was gonna watch it eventually. I was gonna have a good time, mainly because of the fact that I feel like I have sold my soul to this company since 1995.
Oh,
So
wow.
so that's the thing. It's not just like the MCU. It's more like Marvel in general. So I felt like I gotta go there eventually because it was going to be part of the conversation I was going to have with a lot of people. Like,
Yeah.
why exact reason why I woke up at 6 a.m. to record a podcast. But yeah, that's basically how it is. I feel like it was my obligation to watch it and then drive myself insane by doing the Pepe Sylvia thing where where they have the cork board full of all the documents and it looks like a conspiracy theory. That's pretty much me.
Yeah, that's how I feel whenever like I watch an MCU anything. Just connecting all of the dots.
It's Mephisto. Just kidding.
Everything is Mephisto. No.
And Loki. Especially before the finales.
Oh, we will get to that. We will get to
we'll
that.
get to that.
What do you call this? I mean, it was really long overdue even back in 2019, 2020. So even more long overdue now that it came out in 2021. So definitely, it was exciting to see that she was gonna have her own movie because nauna pa si Captain Marvel.
No, right?
So parang, I mean, I guess I kind of understand the rollout because they needed Captain Marvel to be a thing leading into Endgame. So they couldn't have not shown her in a sense. I don't know. So parang it's just like a weird thing in terms of release rollout, I guess.
Exactly. Like why release her after her character dies in Endgame? Like why couldn't you release this like right after Captain Marvel or before Captain Marvel? Because they all kind of like continue on to this one pathway anyway. Like it's so weird that you're releasing a movie that's between Civil War and Infinity War
after Endgame.
After Endgame, right? Which has always just been weird. And Natasha was like their first female superhero, as Prince mentioned earlier. So it was just very strange to me that they were taking their sweet time with making this film for her. But I mean, I'm happy that it's there, and that's probably why I think I was like the most hyped out of everybody in this group. I think it's very clear that I was like the most hyped for this Black Widow movie precisely because it was like long overdue and because it was nice to see the evolution of Natasha's character, you know, parting from the male gaze. That was the most important thing to me kasi about Black Widow. Because every other movie that she's been in was directed by a man. So, and it's very, very clear in the shots that they would take of her versus here in Black Widow. And it's weird that this is how I'm starting out this conversation, but it was very, very important for me to see these elements in this film. That it was very respectful of how they treated all of the female characters in this film. There weren't so many like suggestive like body shots. The girls were always like with their hair up, which is so important. Like you guys don't understand like
I was just
how
gonna
hassle
bring that
it
up.
is.
Yeah, hair
all
hair
hairs
compared
up.
to Iron Man 2 where she was always just
the thing, right?
That's Loki.
And it is, but Loki's hair is like way shorter than Natasha's,
Yeah.
so it's more manageable. But like the girls were wearing like combat boots, you know, not like these heeled things that Natasha was like running around in all these other films. So these things that admittedly like Wonder Woman had elements of as well, but it was just really nice to see Natasha Romanoff be respected in that sense of like in a filmmaking sense, because her character has already like been disrespected by like men and the whole like misogyny keme. And to add insult to injury, like her character was being dealt that same disrespect in the films. So I was just happy to see a little bit less of that male gaze in this film. I throw that to the other woman in the room.
Yes,
Because I don't think like the men
pala.
would like appreciate it in that same
Would
respect.
it be horrible if like all the men just started talking at this point? Sorry, go ahead.
No, I definitely agree with Paula. Because the male gaze, I think, is one of the biggest problems of any male-dominated space like the MCU. So it was good to have someone to break out of that. Exactly, I think Paula really expressed it really well. That she really broke out of that kind of mold that the MCU has set for her. Like, and also it was very timely with the content of the film, since it talked a lot about the issues of human trafficking, especially young girls being used by a guy for his own agenda.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was a good film for her to break out of that whole male gaze issue that she's been like plagued with over the years. Although I think, and I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion, but I was kind of hoping the film would be darker to really delve into the
Richard
issues
has
of
that same comment.
Yeah. But again,
Okay.
Marvel.
Yeah.
I know why it turned out like
it's
this.
A Marvel mind space. Yeah.
I know why they had to do it this way, but I think it would have been really interesting if they delved into how dark and how abusive the experience of the Red Room really was. Because I get that the main point of the narrative here was to destroy like her source of trauma, and the source of trauma of like multiple girls across the world. But then I feel like it kind of glossed over the fact of how horrible the traumatic effect on Natasha, Yelena, and the other girls are by the Red Room. So I mean that was for me, like, that's why I think I was just okay with the film. I kind of hope it really delved into that more.
I agree.
But yeah, I get it. It's the Disney censorship.
Yeah. I mean, if you want more of that, like, deep trauma and like anger, the comics are amazing, like, source materials for that. The Black Widow comics.
And I feel like kasi at the point na they're releasing the backstory, it's also balancing the setup na of Yelena as the next in line. So parang it's kind of pointless, at least in the chronological aspect, to dive into Natasha further at the same. So parang in this sense, there's like two leads talaga in the movie na in Black Widow, because it's both the past and the future, and like medyo at least looking at the future, I think they didn't really want to touch on that na, because she she dies anyway. I mean, that's kind of how I see it. So parang I guess maybe we might see that in Yelena's perspective. Once we do see more of her in the MCU, maybe she'll have her own show, we don't know. So baka doon nila i-explore. But yeah, parang I kind of get that. Parang where was that Natasha backstory we've all been teased about since forever?
Yeah. I mean, you can't reference Budapest so much in like this MCU series and only have it like as mentions in this show, diba? In this film rather. Yeah, I was also like equally disappointed at the lack of depth that they took with Natasha's backstory, because as someone who's an avid fan of the comics, grabe talaga siya. the trauma runs deep. But at the same time, I did really enjoy this whole like funny Jason Bourne type of movie, because it made it so palatable for everybody, and I think that's what the Disney censorship is. So it's bad in a lot of respects, but I think in the sense of like making it a whole like good time for the whole family,
it works.
It works.
Yeah.
It works. Like
it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, like I don't think my mom would like the film if it was like as dark as it could have been. So may mga ganong like allowances that I guess we have to.
Makes you think how they're gonna approach the R-rated Deadpool 3 eventually.
Oh, they can't mess that
Do you
up.
think that's R-rated?
It has to
Well,
be.
that's
It
what
has
they
to be.
said
It's
at least
Deadpool.
initially.
Honestly, they'll do exactly the same thing. I don't think they'll give a new spin to it.
Exactly.
Except,
I
give
think
new characters.
yeah.
It's the characters.
I think yun siguro yung that's probably the thing that like made the negotiation so long, because I really think they fought for it to be like, you can't change it.
Yeah.
That's the whole point.
But they kind of did it, although it's not canon anymore. I think they kind of did it with Daredevil, Jessica Jones, two shows which I really love. No.
True.
Imagine if it turns out the Deadpool show gets hit with an even worse R rating. It ends up being worse than the other two.
Like an NC-17 film na. Woo!
Yeah.
Grabe.
But ayun, I like maybe we'll get an Yelena treatment na ganun. Sana, I'm hoping.
But Yelena, I did not expect to like as much as I did. Like the way that they did her
mean,
in the
Florence Pugh.
films.
You mean
Yeah.
Florence Pugh?
No, it was
Florence
like
Pugh.
okay. Okay, I don't. I'll admit, I never really liked Florence Pugh. I never got her hype. But like Yelena as a character in the comics, she wasn't this funny. So like making her this way, natuwa naman ako to see. So it is mostly the Florence Pugh aspect though. Okay, I'm not it's not gonna lie. She was funnier than I expected her to be. Which is great naman to see. But what do you guys think of like all of the other characters? Because there were like a bunch of like really
Oh, I love David Harbour. I love him so much.
patron saint of Russian
I
orphan.
love it.
Super enjoy. Actually, the whole family, parang ang ganda ng dynamic, even in the beginning, seeing the fake American family life.
We're all going on an adventure.
I can't believe that they didn't have time to like let the kids put on their shoes. Like ganun ba talaga? Bilis yung mga ganaps na hindi man lang makasuot yung mga bata. But yeah, David Harbour was great. Rachel Weisz is always a good. I always love seeing her on screen anyway. But I think the most important character that people like got to see here was like Taskmaster, aside from Yelena, of course.
Ayan na si RJ.
yung,
yung paghinga ni
You can
RJ,
feel, yeah, exactly. You
rinig
can
mo.
feel the.
You can feel the frustration.
Go ahead, RJ.
RJ has a lot of feelings about Taskmaster.
Are we actually going to talk? Are we actually going to talk about Taskmaster this time?
Yeah.
Hello.
Okay. So I've actually calmed down a lot since my initial reaction to what ended up happening with Taskmaster, and I might as well out it already, just in case any of you haven't watched it, listeners. But I'm actually fine with what she ended up being as. Like, I think my only gripe was that you gave her the identity of someone who is really excited to see in the from how you translate them from how they were in the comics and virtually every other media to the movies. It's more like why am I blanking out on the other example that they used in the MCU? You Mandarined Taskmaster. Let's put it that way.
That's what pretty much.
It was Mandarin. It was no. I have the other example before Mandarin. You X-Men Origins Deadpooled him.
Okay, that's worse.
Oh, that's even worse.
Oh no, it's Deadpool is still worse. I'd say like Taskmaster is between Deadpool and Mandarin in that regard. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
but
I get it.
But yeah, I feel like you were able to craft this character that, in a lot of ways, was meant to be a dark reflection of who Black Widow was. Like if she could have very well ended up being like Taskmaster in that she could have been used to be this weapon that would have just been there to serve the wishes of the one powerful guy, Dreykov, and that could have been her in another lifetime, but because she ended up meeting all these other people, realizing that I had more to give than just being someone who kills for a living.
Yeah.
I feel like you were able to establish that dynamic between who Widow would have been, and who Widow is now, especially since we're like her movies taking place after, canonically speaking, it's taking place how many movies in? Yeah, after Civil War, where she's more of a, we already have more insight into her identity, where she's a fully realized character in our eyes because we already know all this stuff about her.
Yeah.
So in that regard, Taskmaster does work. It's just that, again, not a huge fan that you had to use the name and the character and all of that to tell a story, just because I was really excited for what he was able to bring. I will say though, I actually like how she fights in this movie, just because the way that they establish her identity through the fight scenes, where like almost every other move that she does is a reference to how all the other Avengers used to fight. Like you see how when she fights Red Guardian, she does the knife flip that Captain America uses in Winter Soldier, and then when they fight like 2/3 near the end of With Away and Winter Soldier, he does that, and he also ends up using like a lot of the similar moves Black Panther used against Hawkeye in the Civil War fight. So I think like as far as developing those callbacks to other movies through the fight scenes, Taskmaster worked perfectly. But yeah, like I think that's all I have to say on what happened. I do hope. I actually wait one last thing. I do hope that because she doesn't die at the end of the movie, I still feel like there's still a bit more time for you to be able to develop her into being someone who could follow that mold, like as what he is in the comics as being this mercenary. Like I probably like a more heroic one because given the changes in the backstory, but you have more of that freedom to go like delve more into her as a character down the line if it turns out that that's going to be something that you would want to explore.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's it about Taskmaster. I ended up. It's funny because I thought I thought I was gonna be a lot angrier about this when I started. I was like, I woke up at 5 o'clock. I'm not. I don't think I have enough energy to be angry about Taskmaster. Yeah. Overall, like, yeah. Everybody else?
I'd like to follow RJ because I think I'm on the other side in the sense that like I have, I'm a big fan of the comics, but I don't really like care about them in the sense that I kind of treat them as two different things. I don't really mind that, the MCU changes stuff and everything because I'm not, even though I was a fan and I've read the comics growing up, I don't really have the same attachment to them for whatever reason. Maybe it's because, I don't know, like in my head, I've always treated the films as like a separate entity and I never really expected them to take anything but inspiration from the comics. I really like Taskmaster because I think she represented a lot of what I wished the Black Widow movie was. Because like I've always wished that the MCU would get more into the darker side of their heroes. Maybe that's also why I'm a bigger fan of like DC. Not a bigger fan, but I'm more sympathetic towards the DC movies. Again, they suck, but they're not afraid to talk about the darker side of their heroes. I think a lot of the times to like a terrifyingly like it's like too much darkness on that end. But I think kasi like there's this moment in the Black Widow film where they talk about that the same similar thing that they talked about in Age of Ultron where they had a hysterectomy done on all of their widows, and that's always something that stood out to me as like they tried to talk about it in Age of Ultron, but they didn't really talk about it. And it's like one of the most graphically, like you can imagine it. Like there's a name for the operation that happened. When you talk about Bruce Banner, he got radioactive like gamma rays into his body, transformed into the Hulk. It's not really like a human thing. Same thing with Tony Stark, like the shrapnel on his chest. You can't really like think about it. But with them, there's like it's an operation. Like this happens to women, and it happens to women all around the world, and sometimes against their will. And it's this really interesting. I think it could be a really interesting thing for them to talk about. Like what you guys talked about, Paula and Sel, where it was like, why didn't we talk about this more? Why is it that the one scene that you guys talked about it was them kind of joking around with David Harbour's character, and when they're piloting the plane. And I get that, it's censored because it needs to be family friendly and stuff. But I think, Black Widow is so perfect to talk about like a lot of the darker side of the heroes. Like they tried to do it with Iron Man 2 and Iron Man 3, where it's like, these people have been through a lot and they're human. That's kind of like the idea behind a lot of the heroes is that they rise above like the difficulties that they have. But what I wish that they would talk about more is that trauma doesn't really work that way for a lot of people. It's not just something that disappears. It's not something you get over. It's not something that you can go back to and confront very easily and then just kind of grow from it. A lot of the times, trauma is damaging. It doesn't help people. It makes you a worse person. And it's in it, you fall into a spiral where it's like you start blaming yourself for not being like a strong enough person to overcome your trauma. But it's not your fault. Your trauma isn't your fault. Fortunately, that's why our heroes are heroes, but I wish that we would humanize them more and turn them more into people. And that's why I really like the Taskmaster character because she
was that.
was that.
Yeah,
Exactly.
the trauma that
And
never moved on. Yeah.
exactly. And like literally all of, even like her physical attributes, how she's such a good fighter and stuff, isn't from her. She didn't choose to become that, right? Like she didn't train super hard and overcome her trauma. Like no, her trauma literally took over her entire life, right? And I wish that they talked about that more and explored it more. But like RJ said, she's not dead. Hopefully she comes back, and with all the other widows, because there was that other character. I'm not sure if she was given a name, but the widow that has a sort of connection with Taskmaster. I really hope that they go back to her and talk about it more, because there's so much to talk about there that I really feel like they just kind of skirt around all the time. But I think kasi my frustration comes from feeling like Disney always assumes that kids won't get it. I feel like it's always the children that they're worried about. Like, hey, kids won't know like what you're talking about. Like, there's a way to talk about a lot of movies recently in the past few years have proven that you can talk about these things in a way that kids can understand, but you don't downplay how important it is. Like you want to talk about like consent or depression, these heavy topics that for whatever reason over the years we've been conditioned to think that children won't understand. They do. Kids can have really complex emotions and complex thoughts. Maybe they can't articulate it as well as we can because they're not as old as us, and they haven't had the experience, literally just the vocabulary. But I think like it's kind of messed up to assume that kids won't get it, because it's these kids that will experience these things growing up. So when are we going to teach them? Are we going to teach them after they experience these things? Are we going to teach them after they experience the trauma, or are we going to teach them beforehand? And Marvel is literally the biggest franchise on the planet, and they're not going to do that. And that's why, like, again, I think the Black Widow movie is a great movie. It's really fun. I think the action is amazing, but they gave up another opportunity because I feel like they're scared, and I hate it because they can be the ones to afford to make the mistake. Oh no, we didn't make $100 million on our movie. Boo-hoo! Like, too bad. It's fine. I think we'll live with it, Marvel. I think we're not gonna. I don't think we're gonna have like a financial crisis on our hands just because you guys didn't try. So yeah, that's why I really, in some ways I like the Black Widow movie because they touched on it. But it's, I guess, the word that the feeling that I have is frustration. It's not that I dislike the film, and it's not like I dislike any of the characters or the story. It's that I have this frustration because I feel like it could be more, and that's that. That's all I have to say about that.
Just funny as a woman that you didn't appreciate that, because the whole hysterectomy discussion was one of my favorite parts of the film. As a woman, it was one of my favorite parts of the film because I find it like it was funny to hear, but then it's still the visual afterwards that kind of haunts you. I don't think that takes away from like how serious that thing was. It was very serious. The way that Yelena was discussing it, deadpan, was very serious. It was just the fallopian tubes, I think, to me was the joke. Everything else was like super serious to her because she was conditioned to think that this is normal. This is what happens to everybody I know. And I like that it had me thinking about it after the film, talking about it with my brother, and then we would discuss that scene, and he was the one who brought up like, that's so visual. It's so visual the way that they talked about it that it scared him. So I understand, like I definitely understand where you're coming from, but I think like the other side of how that writing went and how it makes, like, think about it, guys. Like, I don't know if as guys like you thought about it as visually as I did, but I know my reproductive organs. Diba? Like just hearing them saying that they were just chopping it off, that's terrifying to me.
I think it's a matter of context also of where you're coming from. Because for parang I get what you mean also, Paula, na parang just I guess a more casual example is like how parang for me family and friends are mostly female. So like when they talk about the red days, it's like some people will always apologize. Oh, sorry to talk about this. I'm like, it's fine. I get it. It's like, it's nothing new to me. But for some people, parang talking about those days, it's so funny. I mean, talking about those days, parang talking about menstruation, parang it's also a different parang experience for different people because some people are just so used to it, but some people are like uncomfortable hearing about it. So parang I guess there's that dynamic of how you're conditioned, I guess, or how you experience that within your circles. So parang I guess it's a matter of that. In terms of Dren's point, Paula's point, it's also how we get into that psyche, into understanding that female perspective. Yun. But like circling back lang din to my point kanina, I think that's what inherent, it's becoming an issue. It's like it's always thinking about the future of what can happen in the franchise rather than doing it
Focusing on the film
in
itself.
the actual film. Like it's always about building the foundations for the next one rather than just staying in the current movie. For example, yung Taskmaster, medyo nabitin ako na parang I was expecting kind of more from the Taskmaster character. But yun na nga parang, and the Yelena thing kanina that I mentioned, I think that parang that factors in na parang, you know, some things that you could put in parang you hold back because you're holding it back for the next thing that you're gonna make people wait for. Parang yun yung, that's my take on these Taskmaster things also. But definitely exciting to see more on that.
Sorry, can I just say thank you, Paula, for letting me know. I'll definitely like go back and watch it again and try to appreciate it from that point of view. I guess hindi ko lang talaga na-gets, but thank you for letting me know.
I understand, yeah. To me kasi it was just like very clearly written by a woman, that dialogue. Yeah, so kaya ko rin siya nagustuhan. But in any case, that was like a very like deep dive into hysterectomies.
into the red days. Into the red room.
Into the red days.
Into the thick of it.
But yeah, there's just so many things about like the MCU films that will always be like a reference to other things that I think is both interesting and at the same time a little annoying. Like when the vest scene like came up, when Yelena first like wore the vest, I was like both like Natasha, but at the same time it's like there's no need for it really. I just like the fact that Yelena was talking about it again, like very clearly written by a woman, that it has pockets.
Yeah.
Like you guys don't understand how important it is for women when their clothing has pockets. So it was just this whole like adorable sequence for me. And when did you guys realize that it was the vest that she was wearing in Infinity War? Or did it like not?
When she gave it, that's when I realized.
That's when you realized.
When she gave it, I was thinking to myself, wait a minute, she did wear a vest in Infinity War. Not in Endgame though. I know there was.
Not in Endgame.
Yeah, she wore it in Infinity War, which is cool.
I've always kind of questioned that green vest, but now that it has a backstory, I'm like, wow, my mind was blown.
Like questioning it in a fashion sense.
Yeah, na parang I'm not really a fan of this green.
Dude, she's a spy soldier.
He needs the pocket.
You need the pockets.
Well, like Paul, I was super distracted by the pockets thing.
Right?
Because I don't think men will ever understand the frustration that when you bring a bag and then all your guy relatives or friends are like, "Ay, pwede pa lagi sa bag mo." And I'm like, the heck?
Excuse me,
that's
like
why pockets, like bring your own bags, dudes.
Or like,
pockets are very important to women.
They are.
Or bring your own vest.
Yeah, it will become a thing post-pandemic.
Not gonna
will be
lie.
like pocketed vests.
Not gonna lie, I did end up searching Shopee for like a similar looking vest. Never know when you
That's a merch potential there, huh? Disney should, capitalize on that.
They should just have pockets on everything.
Strike while the iron is hot.
Exactly.
Yeah, true.
Pockets, guys.
Get your Black Widow action figure with pockets.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but it's those cues I think that are very important to me because it very clearly shows that it was a woman who wrote it. So that's always fun.
It reminds me a little bit of like the Birds of Prey film.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
a moment when like they
hair tie.
see Junice Moyet's hair, was getting in her face, and they were like hair tie, and I was like, I never would have thought about that. So cool.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, man. These are the struggles.
I know.
You will never
in my head, I'm always
experience
like,
in this life.
You guys don't have pockets, like. It's so weird.
Like the fact that men can fit like their whole ass wallets in their pocket is like amazing to me. Whereas as a woman, like the pocket is like this deep,
Hmm.
so it's not even like my
Or it's a
whole thing.
fake pocket.
It's a fake
I don't know why
pocket,
they
Yeah.
enjoy
worse.
making fake pockets.
One time I bought a pair of pants that had fake pockets, and it was terrible. It was the worst.
So, yeah, these are things that
But if you,
I appreciated in the film.
This is a pocket appreciation.
This is a pocket
Podcast.
appreciation
Exactly.
discussion.
Shout out to all the pockets out there.
Yeah, shout out to all of the brands that put pockets in their women's clothing.
Hot pockets. Joke.
Shout out to Hot Pockets too. If you want to sponsor us, why not? I love Hot Pockets. But I think we can like end it by discussing the end credit scene. I mean, we've been talking about like how MCU films build up to the next big thing. What did you guys think of the end credits of this film?
Thunderbolts.
Yeah, I mean,
Thunderbolts.
I mean, what else could it be? Like, what else could it be? What else could Val be up to?
Yeah. Like ever since like she was introduced to us, may Falcon, Winter Soldier. You know, I was reading articles na parang they're making a anti-Avengers. I don't know when they're gonna show up, but that's something I'm looking forward to. And I'm pretty sure that in the end of Shang-Chi, Val is going to be recruiting Abomination. Pretty sure of it.
Oh yeah.
Like
I'm
in all the
100%.
movies, in all the movies and shows, they'll insert her somehow, and then I'm looking forward to that. I can't imagine them being in like an Avengers movies, but I'm excited.
Or maybe
to see.
the She-Hulk
Maybe the
show. Kasi diba, Abomination will be in She-Hulk also.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. And then she could also be recruiting what's her name?
Titania.
Yeah.
So that's something, and we can see Elena again in Hawkeye, sana.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something I'm excited for.
I
Like,
literally
was just-
screamed
yeah,
when Val
go.
appeared.
Yeah, you know, like I was just waiting. Okay, there's an end credits. Where is this gonna go? The moment I saw Val, I was like, okay, Yelena's going to Disney Plus. She's going to Disney Plus.
She was already on Disney Plus.
I'm happy about that, but like, okay, she's a Disney Plus exclusive now because like, as we'll talk about later, Loki has expanded a lot for the MCU, but now we get this part of the MCU like much more grounded. This other side, now it's not the big tiny thingy. We have U.S. agent here now. We have Yelena. Eventually, we will get Abomination, and who knows who Val will get. This will be another story, some stories that Marvel will tell, and it's just another flexing how much storylines they can handle, which is I guess nice because we get to see more stuff. We're gonna consume it anyway. Yeah, I'm happy that we get to see more of Florence Pugh. I want to see more of what she does. I don't really care na the motivation. Oh, this is the guy who killed your sister. I don't really care about that. I just really want to see her more again. And looking forward to Hawkeye.
True. Interesting, now that we were supposed to see Val here first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what to think
I was
about
about to
that.
mention
Like either way, naman works.
I think it worked more nga because it was, you know, we saw her first in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. There's like a bit more insight on who her character is.
Yeah.
Because diba, imagine watching like Black Widow and then seeing her and being like, who the heck is this woman?
Yeah.
Right?
Which makes me think also, is this like a new insert of what the after credits scene is, or was it really intended to be that after credits?
I feel like I feel like it was intended already. It ended up.
It's a callback to the Ross thing and si Tony Stark recruiting.
Yeah.
Right.
Ganun din dating niya eh. That's why.
Ang ganda nga eh. Yeah, that's what I like about it. So like, okay, you guys are self-aware.
It was the unintended benefit that this ended up being delayed to the point where it actually makes more sense to see it this way than the other way around.
True. Okay.
But yeah, go Thunderbolts.
Go Thunderbolts.
Agatha Thunderbolts to like Thunderbolt.
Thunderbolt.
Thunders.
Okay, this is a pretty big episode because we're discussing like two major like Marvel events. Normally take up only one. But let's get into why I think most of you are on this podcast.
Dude, initially she was like, can you the Black Widow episode? I was like, I'll think about it. And then she was like, it's now a Loki episode. I was like, I'm in.
Kaya pala Paula was like, let's just merge them. Because I was like, do we have separate discussions as we usually do?
Yeah.
But like the timing of it, the parang almost the same time drop of both the finale and like, so
It
Paula
really
like,
was meant to just be like to be individual though, but again, like scheduling conflicts as well made it so that parang let's just do it in one go as well. One mega
Yeah.
episode anyway.
Split this in part 1 and part 2.
Nah, we're already here.
I mean, like, cut it now. And then, like, are you gonna edit this? I don't know how it works, but yeah.
I think this is fun.
It's late 1, 2.
Okay. And then Cholo starts this podcast this time kasi tapos na yung akin.
Welcome to part 2, guys.
But yeah, I mean, like, welcome back to the multiverse, I guess now with Loki. Just so
What's
much
a
discuss,
multiverse, Joe?
I didn't even know nga, like, which I should start with because technically, like, Loki happens like every witch era, which event. But I think that's cool. It's another one of these like Marvel characters go to therapy situations that I think will be was really fun to watch. But let's start off with the TVA because that was what was very confusing to me when the trailers started for Loki. Ooh, 1 hour, kaya natin to, guys. But I had no idea what the TVA was. What did you guys think about this like Doctor Who bureaucracy / Citadel of Ricks type of setup that they had with the TVA?
I think off the bat, it's really hard to get people into time traveling things if they parang they're generally not into it or a bit more casual. Kasi parang I mean Paula and Richard and I guess are like Doctor Who fans, so like we're kind of used to it in a sense, but bringing it into like a larger franchise like this kind of makes it a bit complicated. So parang the first episode,
It's a gamble.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna tell you the truth. I still don't 100% understand it. I'm gonna tell you the truth.
Exactly, and that's coming from parang someone who has that background. So parang the episode 1 was really essential to kind of like build the groundwork for what is gonna become the next phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, not just on TV or whatever you want to call streaming at this point, but also generally the whole thing, right? So parang yun, that's just like the scary part about even in Endgame, diba? The time heist in itself is inherently like, how do you explain that? How do you find loopholes into that? Parang all that wibbly wobbly timey-wimey stuff is just really like really complicated to try and flesh out, especially for a general audience. So yun, that's like those were like my thoughts coming into it. But generally exciting na parang, oh, time travel show and features Loki. So parang exciting. Yun, it's for me.
I mean, I'd echo the same sentiments. Like my dad, the first few episodes of Loki was just constantly asking what's happening. Ano nangyayari? Hindi ko naiintindihan. And it's not because my dad like doesn't enjoy like Marvel types of films. He really does, but it is the time travel element that really knocks everyone off their axis.
Mhm.
It's hard. It's a hard type of storyline to get right. Richard and I will argue day and night over what's that X-Men movie?
Days of Future Past.
Days of Future Past. Like I don't think it's a very well written time travel movie. Richard thinks it was a really good movie. It's one of those things where time travel is tricky. And agree, it was like a huge gamble for Marvel to get into it. But I'd like to think like the end result kind of paid off into the possibilities again of what Marvel could get
That's
into.
true. That's true. Ako, I don't expect everybody to understand it. Like even now, I don't 100% understand it. But
what confuses you is what I want to know.
Because the thing is, I understand that the Sacred Timeline is like one timeline, diba? Or maybe a few timelines that are kind of overlapping. But how are there so many variants if those guys never existed in the first place? Like the whole Crocodile Loki had to be there. Parang, he had to be born he had to grow up and everything. How is he not? You get what I mean? Parang
Okay.
he needed to have a whole life, a whole timeline. That would must mean even beforehand, the sacred timeline must be like multiple timelines. Like you get what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the thing that confused me. How there's so many variants, but I thought when the sacred timeline should just be one timeline, unless the one timeline is already multiple timelines on its own. Does that make sense? Like all these variants, how? But where did they belong in the first?
Unless the TV is really bad at their job and they just let Crocodile Loki grow up. Exactly what you're saying. It doesn't make any
so
sense.
that's one thing I still don't have 100. Like a
This
concrete
is assuming
answer to.
that Crocodile Loki was born as a crocodile, though.
Exactly.
Because
That's
I
true.
thought
Ayun,
always
we
thought
don't
of it
know
as a
that yet,
spell.
Could you imagine like he's a crocodile and like Thor
No, but
and
like
everyone?
frog, diba? We have
Frog, yeah, exactly.
Also could be a spell. I don't know. It was one
That's
of the
true.
things that I
No,
was
but what
like,
if in that universe like Thor and Odin are just humans and they told Loki you're adopted and he was like, what?
Yeah, I guess pwede. But again, we don't have like 100% concrete answer on that.
Yeah.
Pero ayun, generally ako, I don't 100% understand the rules, but it's there just in case we want to understand. And I
That's
feel like moving on, like the other movies, I feel like everybody will ask questions about this multiverse thing. But we've had Fox for the longest time. We've had, yung Sony Spider-Man universes and all these other superhero movies that kind of overlap with the other universe, but they don't. So I feel like generally people will watch the films even if they start delving into timey-wimey with Liwapu stuff. So the Loki show is there if they want to understand it. But moving on, I feel like people don't just have to get the gist that there are multiple timelines. Like that's basically the basic thing you need to get out of this. Like that's what I think. I think it's complicated if you want to understand, pero beyond that, you don't really have to get into it.
Sorry, I was just gonna say that I think that they mask that whole issues with the idea of coming up with a whole new pseudoscience and how time travel works by putting it in the context of a bureaucracy.
Yeah.
You know how when you're like, okay, this is gonna sound so horrible, but when you encounter like so much red tape and so much paperwork, that nothing really makes sense anyway.
Yeah.
So I think it was a really weirdly smart move to put it in the context of like a very heavy red tape bureaucracy. And it also added like a very sinister undertone from the start.
Yeah.
So I think for me that's how they were able to navigate the whole difficulty with time travel. Not saying that it answered all the questions, because like Richard said, it doesn't really make sense if you like sit down and really think about it. But if you think like, oh, it's like a government office where you don't know what the heck's happening, parang you as a viewer can kind of suspend your disbelief a little bit longer.
Yeah. That's true. Again, Marvel
logic,
Marvel mind space.
No, but yeah, that sinisterness that you mentioned, Sal, like it was very, very present in that first episode. Like the minute that Miss Minutes appeared, I was like, this clock.
The video on
that they were taking people, against their will. That's off.
In and of itself was
that
scary.
off.
Yeah. The Infinity Stones as well in the first. Was it the first episode or the second?
The one in the drawer.
Yeah, the one in the drawer. The thought, bringing it back lang to Natasha for a second, like she died for paperweight. Like that just did not sit well with me for
I'm gonna like
quite
explode
some time.
when we talk about that. I'm
curious.
so angry.
How did that scene affect you? I was curious.
It was like, so there's so many of these things pala just out there, and these Avengers were risking their lives for things that this dude from the good place uses as a paperweight.
They could get the paperweight.
Yeah.
I just feel like it undermines like. Oh, I'm sorry. Were you?
Finished? No. I mean, I was gonna make the same point. It undermines everything that they did in Endgame.
Exactly. It's like, okay, so Tony died for like 5 paperweights, and Thanos is like just kind of this dude.
With like a bunch of paperweights.
Exactly.
On
him. It's so.
I wish they didn't make that joke.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't know. I feel like they could say that the stones don't have power in that world without saying that they're useless. It's very different, right? Like it's so like frustrating to see Loki just kind of be dragged into this universe, because it for me, because like from a narrative standpoint, it feels like Marvel can just Deus Ex their way out of anything. It's always just kind of like, okay, there's this thing that you never knew about, by the way, and this answers all of your questions, but there's no narrative context to it. There was no like implication that it ever existed. But we're just gonna throw it in there because we have this entire universe to drop on, which I understand. Naman din that like, okay, the implication is that yes, this entire world exists outside of the movies, and we're just exploring it little by little, and everything. It's just if you didn't know anything about the comics, and even if you just remove that part, which I think to an extent you should be allowed to do because they are movies and they should be able to stand on their own. It doesn't make sense. It just doesn't. It doesn't. Another one, it doesn't make sense, but it just feels like cheating. I guess.
Wow, you must have hated that finale then.
Yeah. Yep.
He did.
You must have hated that finale.
Yeah, but I'll save that for when we get there.
But yeah, there's just Loki was so interesting to me because it was Loki and at the same time it wasn't him.
Mm-hmm.
It was just toying with this line that I didn't know how I felt about it like half of the time, to be quite honest, until like the last few episodes where I was like really getting into it. But it was interesting, but if anything, I loved how Loki interacted with Mobius, especially. I Owen Wilson is always just a joy to watch in anything that he does. So what did you guys think of like these new characters that Loki had brought in? We'll talk about Sylvie like in more depth. Of course.
I think it's interesting to put out na parang it's nice how Marvel were able to parang recognize or respect their respective deaths, but still be able to give them their own things. Like for example, Black Widow, na she's dead officially, but they were able to give her like a prequel that still made sense, that made you parang pa rin appreciate the standalone movie. And with Loki, it still respects that death in Infinity War, but now here you have a new Loki. But it's still kind of the same Loki who got to see the events of the old Loki that we know. So parang ang ganda lang na they don't have to like resurrect them or like it's great that there's like a workaround in that sense. And now that the multiverse is open, I guess it makes it even easier to not just easily resurrect people just for the sake of it, but find more creative ways to do it. So yeah.
No, yeah, I was afraid that Loki as a show would be just them resurrecting the character, which is like enough. Like this character had died and lived over and over again in the series, and I just really wanted him at one point to just stay dead. But this was interesting. I do still feel like it's cheating though. It's my same feeling with Days of Future Past, where that ending was just cheating. But yeah, anybody else? On Mobius in particular, Sana.
I like Mobius. I love Owen Wilson.
I was expecting him to like say "kachow" or like "wow."
My brother was really hoping he'd say "kachow."
Yeah.
He said how. He said
or
how.
like he'd talk about like how he was a car as a variant in some.
I would like to see the Mobius Lightning McQueen variant.
Yeah,
exactly right.
That was wasted,
yes,
but they could have made it red. They could have added the 93. They did not.
Wasted opportunities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he was great. He was lovable,
yeah,
man.
so
I mean,
good.
he still played himself, man. There's nothing.
I have a friend who's serious that he's just a variant of
Owen Wilson. Different.
That's so good.
Yeah, he's a variant of real life Owen Wilson. I'd believe it.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
I would believe it. Yeah.
I'd believe it.
And he meets himself later, and he's like, "Wow."
Wow.
Wow.
I'm not gonna lie. I feel like that's something they could do in the Deadpool movie, because Deadpool movie did go across time, in different timelines. Did in Deadpool 2,
Yeah.
where he killed Ryan Reynolds, he could bump into Mobius and
That would be
bring
great.
it to
And
Owen
then
Wilson.
I
there's
feel
another
like
Cars variant as well.
yeah, they should have made the car that he drove in that last episode or last two episodes na parang
Red.
should have been red with like
Yeah.
lightning elements. That would have just been a cool Easter egg.
Yeah.
I love this just like universal appreciation for
cars.
Mr. Owen Wilson.
Season 2 ideas, Marvel.
I feel like I really liked him too because he was
All
like
the
a really...
Vice Ganda variants, guys.
Oh
This
my
is
God.
it.
This is how it happens. This is how it happens talaga.
This is how all of the
Thank you,
boy,
Sylvie.
girl, bakla, tomboy characters all meet. Oh. We're just very aggressively pushing this by cinematic.
I have no more comment. I'm no longer affiliated with them, so you guys. No, but I was gonna say that I really like the one because he was like a real person. He kind of reacted to everything like I mean, like as normally as like a time traveling like super variant like who's lived for eons and stuff like. Because the way he treats Loki, he treats him like a normal guy, which is one of the things I really liked about the series is that Loki's not a god; he's just kind of a dude. And they even talk about like, oh, he's like a hedonist, and he's like a I don't know, like polyamorous, I guess, and like he just kind of had these moments like really real moments. Like he was F. Scott Fitzgerald, right? Oh no, that he's the dude on the plane. He was like
You're talking about Tom Hiddleston.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Like it's Tom Hiddleston playing
which variant are you talking
Midnight in Paris, which is another movie. I know. And Owen Wilson was also in that movie. Sorry, completely different movie. But yeah, no, like it showed, and like the cameo of Sif, I thought was really fun and cool.
That was the best, I think.
Like all of these like little like side characters, and then the people that they meet and interact with, and Loki just kind of has to deal with the fact that he's not all powerful. Like he confronts that. Like episode 1 palang, he's like he sees himself die, which is so like, could you imagine watching how you were supposed to die, and now it's like, well, what am I supposed to do now? That was my destiny. And it's like, well, like what am I allowed to do? What's so interesting about his character too is like, unlike the TV, everyone in the TVA who kind of accepts that like, okay, well, this is my reality now, instead of, because he's brought into this world where it's like, okay, we exist outside of the main timeline, which means that I am truly free. Whereas everyone else in the TVA isn't truly free, right? That's what makes him like the real variant, is that he comes with like a completely different mentality. And it's like, that's the entire basis of the series, is that he's trying to prove that everything he's doing is because he wants to do it. And because he chooses to do it, not because somebody else is making him do it, or because he has like trauma and stuff like that. So it's so
more with Sylvie. That's more of Sylvie's.
Yeah. No, I mean like the two of them. Loki as in like the character, all of his variants. Like that's what they try to explore. Yeah.
It really is. It was funny though, like seeing him in the first few episodes and just the fact that he's just like a real guy when you're just really brought down by the bureaucracy. We all have made the face that Loki's made while he was going through all of these parts of the TVA.
It's like you gotta go get a ticket.
Yeah, dude, like very strong denial at first. And then you just kind of like accept that you're in this like mess. It was great. Ravonna was also a very interesting character to see. I didn't really know where they were going to go with her. I still don't know where they're going to go with her. But it
Hunter
was
B15 was cool also.
Hunter B15.
Yeah, I love him. Hunter B15.
Yeah, she's a great actress in Lovecraft.
Oh
it's
so
a
good.
horror movie. It's that horror movie. Yung This Is Our House. Where she's like a refugee. Dude, that was like she's a great actress. So kudos to Marvel for recognizing talent and getting her.
Also like Jonathan Waiters later on. Amazing. Also from Lovecraft Country.
Oh, okay. It's like I was thinking like wait, okay. DB Cooper, by the way, was who Loki was in that movie.
DB Cooper, sorry, not F. Scott Fitzgerald. Thank you. And the moment I said the name, I was like, that's not it. That's not it. Stop talking.
Girl, which variant are you talking about?
Exactly. I watched like a different series.
I mean, we were talking about earlier how the Taskmaster was different in the Black Widow movie as it was in the comics. What did you guys think about I'm thinking Time Lord, that's not the right term. Because I'm thinking
the Conqueror.
No. The ones behind Cholo.
Timekeepers.
The Timekeepers.
Yeah, I mean, like differently portrayed. And we'll get to Kang in a bit. He's a little bit like more in depth, I think, the persona. But like those who read the comics and understood who the Timekeepers were, what did you guys think? That they were just like robots?
I was honestly not surprised. Like with the moment when they showed up in episode 4, I was like, okay, there's something more to it. Because I already fell into this thinking that there's something up with this bureaucracy. There is something behind this. So when they showed up in 4, I was like, okay, there's something up, and I know there's a bigger story behind this. So I was not even towards the end of episode 4, when all that was happening, I was like, okay, I'm ready. I already assumed this, but how will this lead into like the bigger? How will it be eventually to Kang? Like how will this lead to that? And so yun nga. So I wanted really to see how the show treat the bureaucracy, like this how they deal with the TVA. Na how na okay, there's this Wizard of Oz happening right here. Na how they deal with it. So okay lang, I was fine with it because I was just really I was just waiting to see who was the actual man behind the curtain. Yun lang yung talaga hinihintay ko.
I felt like Sylvie in that moment though, like, oh, well, it's all a lie, and I mean it was exciting, but at the same time,
It's
parang
a scam.
you do feel
It's a
cheated. Yes, RJ.
You wasted your time. No, but yeah, I felt similarly. I felt like the mystery was all just you were trying to build up who was literally behind them. I also felt similarly felt similarly to Sylvie in that scene. Like, okay, this is kind of worthless, but also there might still be another mystery that you're keeping hidden. Like there's probably like an ace up your sleeve. I also ended up thinking, and this was like a slip up on my end. I thought all this time they were the Watchers. They kept on saying the
Yeah.
timekeepers. I thought they were the Watchers. Like I thought this was gonna. Thought for like a brief moment this was gonna lead up to Watu, and I'm thinking, no, this wasn't gonna lead up to him. I saw him in Guardians too.
Yeah.
Understandable though.
Yeah, I think it was
But it-
like an honest mistake. I would have made that one as well.
But aside from that, yeah, like I think the whole thing with Loki, I feel like, especially since with the later reveal that we are getting a second season, the whole thing with this being one of the first new Marvel series that's coming out on Disney Plus, and especially with this being the start of Phase 4, so to speak, is that this is all meant to get people to ask questions. We're not going to give you the answers just yet. Those are going to come in like
Later on, yeah.
2+ years down the line. We just want to give you questions because we want you to discuss what those potential answers are. We're still keeping our those cards close to our chest, but for now, speculate, see what happens from there. We're just going to keep on answering all these questions that right now you don't have any answers to, but you'll get them eventually. We'll see what the payoff is going to be like. Also, I just realized this the moment you guys started talking about bureaucracy, but did any of you guys ever realize that the beginning of Loki starts out with him going through Thor's character arc in Thor Ragnarok? He ends up being put in another world, ends up being taken captive. His powers do not work. The Miss Minutes video that he ends up watching is almost like the one video that he plays talking about how the Grandmaster's going to be like on Sakaar. And then it even ends with him watching somebody die, get disintegrated because they get poked by a stick.
Oo nga. Only
Pretty cool
realizing.
though.
That's cool, yeah.
Pretty cool though.
Yeah.
It does
I know.
make sense.
It just clicked to me that, oh wait, he's being hot-shotted through Ragnarok right this moment.
Yeah, and
Okay, but
Infinity War. I thought generally episode 1 they had to fast track his development so that we're updated with the Loki that we watched die in Infinity War. It's a bit different, but he's aware of the history of the variant.
It's a crash course. This is your life.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
Ang galing nung parang pagka-meta na, he was just watching the Marvel movies for himself.
It is, no? Weird. There's so many really good characters in this show. We mentioned briefly Hunter B-15. But I think of course we have to talk about Sylvie before we talk about the last big character that this show introduced. I didn't expect a female Loki. I just want to say that off the bat. That wasn't where I thought the show was going to be headed. But I thought it was a really interesting surprise, cool surprise. What do you guys think of Sylvie and how the character progressed in the show?
Kissing was
Parang ako, I like na... what did Richard say?
Kiss scene.
I said the kiss scene was weird.
Oh
Oh
god,
my
that is
God.
like my
Oh,
biggest
no.
I was
biggest gripe.
I was watching it with like a bunch of people, and everyone was like, "Yay, they finally did it!" And I was just like, "Ugh," like just angry.
No, I don't like it. I thought it was gonna be like fun sibling antics.
Yeah, I
You
hated
didn't
it.
need.
I
You
hated
didn't
it.
need to be. It didn't need to be a romance. It did not need to be a
Really did.
romance.
I hated it because
Although I will say that it does end up fitting the character for how much of a narcissist he is. That the only person he ends up falling in love with is himself.
It is.
Which Mobius
Yeah.
did call out. But at the same time, like, I think Loki is a narcissist.
Ganun
But
ba?
you can be a narcissist naman and just be like buds with yourself.
Exactly, right? Like
Right?
no, but my problem with that whole thing is that they imply that to love yourself means literally falling in love with yourself, and that's not true. You could love yourself by being best friends with yourself. That's completely yeah. It's so.
I would
it's so
rather
dumb.
that message. Like
Exactly.
you accept your flaws and just be okay with it. You don't have to like marry yourself.
Exactly. Like what? Like I really love the idea with Sylvie because I love the idea that if you could meet yourself, wouldn't you hate yourself? And personally, like I resonated with that a lot. I was like, yeah, I'd be pretty angry at myself. I wouldn't like myself at all.
I would too.
And I would like, because I'd see all my flaws, and that's like the first thing I would see is that I would see all my flaws. And I think from a psychological standpoint, I think it made a lot of sense because after going to therapy a lot, I realized that I think most people, and myself included, like it's just an automatic thing for a lot of people to see the flaws when you look in the mirror. And to literally have yourself like exist outside of yourself to be given to be forced to like work together with yourself. Like, would you be able to work together with yourself? Would you be able to, like, all of these questions? It was so interesting, and then they ruined it with a kiss. Yep, it was the worst.
Yep.
So it was awesome up until that point. I think because I just really didn't like how he fell in love with himself. But other than that, it was really cool, like thought experiment.
I was still holding out hope, like before, Loki got vanquished or vaporized or whatever in that one episode, that he was just going to say like, I love you as like, a sibling thing, or at least through you, I learned how to appreciate myself better. Any sort of dialogue in that regard. But when the kiss happened, it was just really very disappointing. I think like end for these two characters.
Prune him, prune them.
But as a character, Sylvie's like you get to see Loki.
Sylvie's a great character.
Like a version of Loki who's like motivated, like very motivated, like on the edge all the time. Parang she feels like parang just wreaking havoc, like the most wreaking the most possible havoc you can on something. It was fun seeing Loki like that kind of situation.
And their chemistry is great. I mean, like, ideally it wasn't like a romantic chemistry, but like how these two actors interacted with each other, I think was well worth the watch.
Sobra. And she's very charming, like, very like Tom Hiddleston.
Which is what the Loki should be. I think all of the Loki variants were charming in their own like specific ways, which you have to be, I think, to be the god of mischief.
If I can add about the part about Sylvie is that Sylvie's the character that really like insists on autonomy in a world that is mostly like insisting on controlling everyone, right? She's the one who's always saying like, no, this is my free choice. And that's also what influences Loki to also insist on his own autonomy. And what I found frustrating about the whole kiss scene and why it made me uncomfortable as well is that one of the ways that they were insisting on their own free will was the relationships they made with people, like Loki becoming friends with Mobius, and even like Ravonna kind of had her own twisted thing with her telling Mobius that their friendship is like one in eons or something like that. Yeah. So it's like they're insisting on some kind of choice in a world that's already like been predetermined. So it was nice to see that it was like very platonic care that they often, but then it also falls down that whole trope that like platonic always falls behind when it to like the romantic relationship, which is bullshit, as we all know, right? So it was really frustrating to see that it had to go that way with Loki and Sylvie, and it was just really uncomfortable to watch. Like in general, like when I was watching it, it's like can we fast forward?
That's true. Interesting that you brought up though the control thing, because Loki Avengers was very different. What was his famous line there? No. Like in Avengers 1 where he said na parang everybody wants to be controlled. So, you have this.
Freedom is
Everybody
life's
wants to be
biggest
ruled.
lie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, like in Avengers 1,
Yeah, freedom is life's
he goes
biggest
like,
lie.
everybody wants to be subjected or whatever.
Yeah.
But he feels like
This is your
You
nature.
were made to be
Yeah.
ruled.
There
were
you
made
go.
to be
And
ruled.
that's
This is the
interesting.
nature,
So you have this situation where he doesn't feel comfortable already being in somebody's role.
He
And-
would,
and-
I mean, because like that Loki was, he would be the ruler. He believes that everybody
No, yeah,
else should be
exactly.
ruled
Yeah,
by
yeah.
him.
Mhm.
And that's
Yeah.
interesting. That
Yeah.
seeing that more. Yeah,
And
seeing that
considering
dynamic.
that was just who he was like a few weeks prior.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's
Yeah.
true. Yeah, he made that speech literally a few weeks ago in their time.
Yeah. So I want to ask, like, just because it's fun, who was your favorite like Loki?
Oh wait, can I say
Classic,
something lang
classic.
before we get there?
Okay, go ahead,
I just
Cholo.
really appreciated how they didn't really wait too long to reveal Sylvie because parang they could have gone that route na parang
Yeah.
wait till how many episodes, but they literally revealed her right away, which I really like. Because like second ep pa lang, 'di ba? Parang it's just not like a mystery of the season. Na of course we know, which we'll talk about later, what the real big mystery is or big reveal is. So parang it's just nice how they did that and made her her own character na right away, which is really nice.
And we got to
Yeah.
like delve into her a lot longer.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true. So given that, like, who is your favorite Loki variant?
Oh, classic Loki.
Richard Grant.
Classic
Richard
Loki.
E. Grant. No doubt.
Richard E. Grant, not classic Loki, just
No,
Richard
not
E.
classic
Grant.
Loki. Richard E. Grant. That's right.
Yeah,
Richard E. Grant.
Richard D. Grant was amazing.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
scene stealer, what a scene
Sobrang
stealer.
Yeah,
galing.
man. And I felt so
Yeah.
so many emotions when he like.
Ako rin, and the fact that he made Asgard as the
Yeah,
distraction.
exactly. And
The
it was
fact that
such
he
a
memorized it.
yeah, and it was such a
memory.
it was one of those things na parang it was so like self-empowering for Loki because it was like I think we're stronger. Let line yet. I think we're a lot stronger than we think or whatever.
Yeah,
Like yeah, man.
And parang I was reading it in Reddit, I think, na parang he had all that time to remember
I
Asgard.
remember
when
Asgard.
he was,
Yeah.
So sobrang, ouch.
Yeah. Like in his last moments, he was
Yeah.
thinking of his home,
He was
his
thinking of home.
family.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So his arc was amazing. I
loved it too.
Yeah,
Classic
very-
Loki was a short, like, loved character, but like very well written.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
What a gem.
Kid Loki
I
was badass too. Sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Kid Loki. I was about to bring up Kid Loki. I think he's my favorite variant. There's something about that kid. He was the same guy in God, what Netflix show is this? One of those like edgy teenage shows. But in any case,
All of them.
All of them.
The tall girl series.
What's his name? But in any case, like he has such a presence on screen, like in spite of just ilang ano lang sila, diba? Minutes that he was there. But I think he was my personal favorite.
Yeah. That one line, the scene stealer line. What did you do? I killed Thor.
Killed Thor.
What?
Oh, damn. I was like,
What?
oh.
Galing. I'm trying to look for the name of that actor. But then
Jack Veal. That's what
it'll
it
come to
says.
me later.
That's what it says on the
I think that's
IMDb of
it.
Loki. Yeah, that's it. That's what it says on the IMDb. Jack Veal, and he's from the end of the effing world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The end of the effing world. There we go. That's where I know that kid from.
Well, I was about to say that when you're like, which edgy show was that? Like teenager edgy show. I was like, was it that one?
It's just so many. It's hard to keep up. But we've come to that character that I think everybody's been kind of dying to talk about. He Who Remains in Loki, because he wasn't Kang the Conqueror just yet. What did you guys think when that? I think everybody knew that it was happening, but like when it finally was revealed, what were your guys' thoughts on that whole process?
Ang ganda ng intro, I would say, because we also parang the cast announcement has been made for Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania or Kang, but like you wouldn't really expect like this kind of.
And it was made recently lang. It wasn't like a long time ago.
Exactly. So parang to have this variant early on to plant that seed into the bigger picture, and it was kind of like a scene stealer also in a sense. You would just like you just like pay attention to what he was saying the whole reveal, and like it was really interesting to see, and knowing parang brief background of Kang, you know what's gonna come next pa, and like you wouldn't want Sylvie to open the multiverse in a sense, although you do want to. Parang,
Yeah, we do.
no. Yun lang. It's really it's a nice way to introduce one of many that are to come.
Ako, I have to be honest na
Oh, go ahead.
I still had like small doubts. Like I know there were so many signs pointing, it's Kang, has to be Kang, has to be Kang. But I was still holding out a little bit because I was already disappointed by WandaVision. I held on too much to that. I held on too much na how Walker was gonna end up in Falcon. I was holding out, so I didn't want to fall into that same role. So I was thinking of all the possibilities. If it's not gonna be Kang, will it just be he who remains? Will it just be superior Loki? Will it be classic Loki again coming back? But the moment that I saw it was Jonathan Majors, I was like, oh my god, they're actually doing it. But the way that he builds everything up, I was like, okay, they did. I think this is the right way to move forward. Like, now let's not show Kang right now, but how will you slowly feed the
build up to him?
Yeah.
How will you slowly feed the breadcrumbs leading up to basically who's surprised there's a bigger bad guy than Thanos. You guys never knew about it. But yeah, and Jonathan Majors just reveled in his performance. He just enjoyed it. He was sinister. He was
terrifying.
He was terrifying, but at the same time he was
charming,
enjoyable to watch. But the camera spent so much time on him. Every time like it was closing up and then backward. I was like, oh my gosh, he's really milking it. And it really makes the viewers understand that this is actually not, it's not just a big step for the show. It's a really big step for Marvel in general, because this is where we're heading right now. There is a much, much bigger world out there than we even realized, beyond the universe we know. And then when Sylvie finally stabs him, I was, a lot of people were saying, why did this move is just as bad as Star-Lord in Infinite. I was like, I don't care. Because of this, we get the multiverse.
Yes.
This is our opportunity now to possibly see Toby and Andrew again. This is how Doc Ock and Electro will come in. I mean, for all we know, this might be how the Fantastic Four comes in.
The
X-Men.
And hopefully even the X-Men. So yeah, I was happy na how the character of He Who Remains was treated, how he was treated lang in the finale, especially given this is the last episode, how much time can we allot to him. So that's why I like the build up na episode 4 was humongous, episode 5 was humongous, episode 6, okay, it's not exactly big, but it's a good amount of exposition na we're ending this show, there's more to come, not just in MCU going forward, but also surprise, there's a season 2. But yun nga. So makes me interested to see, okay, what are you gonna do with the season 2, knowing na Kang, the variant na he was talking about, will be showing up in Quantumania. So interested to see how Marvel will treat the next especially since a lot of the movies coming up deal with the multiverse repercussions.
Like Doctor Strange, Ant-Man, as you mentioned.
Mm-hmm. And Spidey.
And I guess Spider-Man, yeah.
Oh yeah, no, Spider-Man.
And I saw like a nice theory na that's why the Eternals are
exactly, that's why
coming in, because the multiverse has been opened and they have to step in.
Imagine if Shang-Chi has a plot line about this.
I think it'll reference. I don't know. We can't tell anymore, to be quite honest.
It's more grounded. It'll go with Val. It'll go in that line of the story. That's what I think.
And then there's a brief shot in Shang-Chi where you see Awkwafina talking to herself.
As Raya, the last dragon.
These are your alternate universe counterparts. I like how this is their like their next step is that you after Thanos, the whole thing was that you had someone who could destroy the entire universe by snapping his fingers. How do you escalate from that? By slowly drip feeding more of the like a lot more of the ridiculous stuff that was in the comics that you didn't realize you could do up until now with this multiverse, with the multiverse angle that they're going through. Because I'm like, as someone who's been reading them for a long time, I like how we're slowly being introduced to more of these characters that people don't really know of, but they end up really into like all this more of the crazier elements of the Marvel comics that could be that would make for really good like Disney Plus shows or movies, and especially because as you mentioned that this is going to lead to stuff like Spider-Man, where we could end up possibly seeing almost like the three major live-action Spider-Man on screen for the first time, and that's going to be like a big thing for people who've been following Marvel, or at the very least like Marvel movies since the early 2000s.
Yeah. I want to hear from Dren, who we know doesn't like.
Oh no. Just quietly sitting here. What are you talking about? I love it. I love Jonathan Majors. I just want to say that again. I think he's amazing. He was amazing in Lovecraft Country, and he's amazing. And I thought like he was good here. I just thought his accent was kind of strange because I feel like he couldn't decide whether or not to be British. But I don't know anything about Kang, so maybe he's just from like the future, and I don't know, a bunch of accents like mixed together. I don't know, because he's just such a good actor. I can't imagine that it was a mistake. And he did say in an interview that he improvised a bunch of stuff at the end because they just kind of let him be weird and strange because he's like, you know, this amalgamation of like 1,000 different personalities, which is really interesting. I think the reason why I didn't like, you know, fall head over heels with the ending was, even though I knew who the character was, and you know, especially the people who I was watching with were all, you know, geeking out over it. I couldn't help but think to myself, nah, is this really the only direction that Marvel could think of to go, which is to go bigger? And it's like, yeah, of course you want like bigger spectacle. That's why like Endgame worked, and it's good to be ambitious and try to be constantly trying to one up yourself. But I think there are different ways to one up yourself, and I was just kind of hoping that they could go in a different direction. Like I really wish it wasn't just like the because they're kind of implying kasi like what me and Paula mentioned before, what we ranted about before, that like the stuff of Endgame was like, oh, that's kid stuff, like, oh, that's not really like as big as it could get, or that didn't even really matter because this guy was the one that orchestrated all of it, right? That's kind of what they're implying, and it's like, man, like, okay, cool, let's say 10 years from now you finish this arc, 20 years from now you finish this arc, where are you gonna go, man? Like it has to stop somewhere. You
end,
like
yeah.
you can go inward is what I'm trying to say. So it's cool, and of course I'm as excited as everyone, as a fan of the comics, as a fan of like all of these franchises that are finally coming together, Fantastic Four, X-Men, all the Spider-Men. Like it's really, really cool. It just kind of feels like now it's almost like they're pandering to the fans.
Yeah.
Like they're like, okay, people are gonna freak out because of this for sure, so let's do this. And in my head, like, I wish they would do something like, okay, you could say that C Kang was like unexpected, but was he really that unexpected? I feel like 4 episodes in, people were kind of guessing that it was gonna be him, right?
Yeah.
And parang they were feeding into that, and they hinted that, and that's the whole thing, is that at the end of each movie, at the end of each episode, they're gonna hint at something else. Now everyone's talking about like the Dark Avengers.
Thing, yeah.
Exactly. And it's like, I wish you guys would do something unexpected, like throw us for a loop, you know? Try something that maybe won't work. It's like stop doing stuff that feels like it'll always work. And I know that's like it's a big ask for a company, you know, that has so many people like relying on it, and so many fans waiting for these sorts of things, and so many people working so hard on these things like years in advance. I'm not saying that they're not working hard and that they're taking the easy way. I wish that they would devote a little bit, you know, maybe a little bit of their budget or whatever and a little bit of the time to something else. Just try something else, just have something weird and different. And pursue Howard the Duck. That guy was cool. Like he was funny. I don't know. Like I guess because naumay nga talaga ako sa Marvel that all these feelings are coming out, and I just worry that eventually that will happen to everyone, and I'd be worried they wouldn't know what to do once people figured it out. But maybe I'm wrong, and that's perfectly fine. I'd love to be proven wrong and to just enjoy the ride and to be brought back into the Marvel world. So yeah,
I guess parang this could be like our wrapping up question about the future after this super major, like
Jonathan
what they call
like Jonathan Major.
True.
Sorry.
Ano yun? Catalytic event? Is that how you call it?
Nexus event?
Nexus events.
The Nexus event of all Nexus events. But yeah, to add to Dren, well, I told Paula this the other week yata. But to add to what Dren is saying, I feel like it's such a huge gamble nga talaga in the bigger picture, especially for casual fans, because we're geeks and we love to see this kind of parang these kinds of developments into the worlds that we're kind of familiar with, but like in the longer run it's just gonna be like much more complicated, and I hope that they're able to at least have people appreciate it in that level na sometimes it could maybe in a sense na the homework aspect of like, I should have watched all the 6 Disney shows and 20 plus movies to be able to catch up to this. If you're not, parang if you're just a beginner trying to get into this whole thing, it's just that parang it's such a complex, parang time travel is complex enough, but a multiverse might even be more complex. So I feel like especially getting into Quantum Mania and Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, and Spider-Man, parang how do you approach this in that sense na you still keep it, I guess,
accessible?
Yeah, than just having the whole idea of multiverses. Pero yun, so that's my take on this. Although it's super exciting, and my heart was beating so fast when Sylvie was about to, like, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the beginning of everything changing.
And the end of you realizing that Loki's in a completely different timeline now than that he.
Who are you?
It was great. I think it was great. But I think like to answer, not an answer, but like to Dren's point, maybe the fact that the multiverse exists is another way of them to like open up these different kinds of stories as well. I think since we now know that there's so many timelines that could like come into play, you never know.
What if?
Yeah, what if I think it's a possible like really great set of series to get into, especially since it's coming right after Loki, and you do now understand that multiverses are real. So exciting. Yeah.
Like the fact now that you have multiverses, now there's a legit excuse for you to do anything you want. Like like anything. So like I'm sure before they had a bunch of rule books and everything. You know what I mean? Like this is what
like
you can
thrown
do.
out the window.
This one, dude, you can go like you
can go DCEU.
Yeah, you can do parang more emotional films, more drama oriented stuff. You know,
and then chalk it up to it being in another.
I'd be okay with that. Basta they establish lang na different like the Joker. Marvel can do crap like that now.
I mean, they did Logan. Everybody keeps forgetting how good Logan was.
Dude, that just means
we were just talking about Richard E. Grant.
All right. There's so much more we could discuss, but this is where we'll wrap up in terms of our discussions on Black Widow and Loki. Really, really interesting stuff, and we're all, I think, if not excited, like waiting to see what Marvel else has in store for everybody.
AKA 3 more movies and 2 more shows this year.
2 more shows this year. Let's do it.
This year alone?
Consume the product.
Yeah, this year alone. So we have 3 movies, diba, and like 2 more shows. We can do it. We can do it, guys.
Spider-Man.
Shang-Chi,
Eternals.
Spider-Man.
And Spider-Man.
Spider-Man is this year?
December this year,
It's a Christmas movie.
I think Richard just got some really good news.
Yeah. Shang-Chi Eternals. Oh my God, we're getting
Pray we can go to theaters by then.
Hopefully.
My gosh.
Fingers crossed.
Oh wait, no. If we Ken, it won't be Spider-Man. It'll be the MMFF movies.
Oh,
Do
No,
they
but
have
Spider-Man's
time
coming
to
out
produce
week
that
before
now, though?
Christmas.
I don't
Diba?
think.
Everybody was
But
so
are there
mad when he
movies
brought up
made?
MMFF. Everyone's like, no,
French.
boo.
All right.
I mean, we got when Star Wars comes out. Usually, we get it for a few days before.
Yeah, for a few
Yeah,
days. Yeah.
we do
Yeah.
get it.
It
So,
better be there. I'm hoping that it's there when I go back home.
oh, you're going. Okay, cool. Yay.
Hopefully.
All right. So, of course, to end the show, we typically give our top picks and recommendations for anything pop culture that we consumed this week. So I can go first. We were talking about this before the show started, but Ted Lasso. I just got into Ted Lasso, and it's just so good. I can't believe like I'm so late to the party, but I'm glad I'm here anyway. If you're looking for like a quick, wholesome, and like really well written comedy, I definitely recommend Ted Lasso. Even if you're not into like football, it's just a fun, adorable watch. I also want to recommend like continuing on with like the geekiness of everything we've been talking about. Lego Masters. I also recently got into this. It's a reality competition where they build Legos. Like what could be geekier than that? But it's so much fun, and like as someone who can only create Legos with like instructions, it's great to see how much more like creative and inventive people can get with a set of bricks. Season 2 is, I think, on episode 6 now. So we have a few more episodes before the finale, and it's great. There's $100,000 at stake, and Will Arnett is the host. How can you not love love the show?
Oh, wow.
And last, it's coming up palang at the end of the week, so this Friday, July 23rd. But the movies that made us season 2 is coming out, and that's always a fun watch. That type of documentary series for me is always great. Cholo, you wanna go next?
Sure. So I have a couple. I'll start with the movie aspect. The Fear Street trilogy on Netflix is amazing. I really love the whole thing as a fan of horror and slashers, and the way they approached it is like kind of parang a mix of modern, making it modern, but also paying tribute to all the classics because it's all ang galing na it's the 1994, 1978, and 1666. So parang to have slasher films set in those times and paying tribute to movies that came before and that were also kunwari Scream was 1994. It had like Scream vibes, and the other one had like more like Friday the 13th. And then yung 1666 is a completely different thing because it's like witchcraft and other stuff like that. And to tie it all into one giant narrative, but also be able to stand alone. It's kind of like a slasher MCU na R.L. Stein, and like having so much. It's the lore that they created and the fact that they were able to turn the teenage marketed Fear Street series of R.L. Stein into an R-rated slasher series, movie series. Ang ganda lang. And if you're into those types of things, Fear Street is really great. Yeah. And then in the music side of things, I'll start with international. I've been obsessed with Sob Rock by John Mayer all weekend. And it's just like feel good, feel sad all at the same time. And if you're into the 80s type or 80s inclined songs, it's really great. If you're familiar with the New Light and Carry Me Away, those are there. So parang the same vibe of songs and really great songs to like dance to and cry to at the same time if you want to. And OPM naman, I think I'm not too sure if I mentioned this last time around, but the Itchy Worms came out with a short animated film for the song "The Life I Know," which is amazing. Pambato siya ng Pilipinas levels in terms of, I guess, having that kind of animation tied into your music, and just check it out. Really great story, and parang the people behind the video are actual animators who do Lego shows, like the short Lego series and stuff like that. So check it out. The Life I Know by the Itchy Worms. And lastly, to shout out to my one of my favorites, Fern. He came out with the song Kagandahan, his first Tagalog song. Super, super love. Might just be part of my all-time faves at this point. So those are my recommendations for this week. Marami for the first time. Anyone else? Sel?
Okay. I really, really love Fruits Basket. I've been watching the remake on Netflix. I think the final season aired a few months back. It's so wholesome and warm. It feels like a hug when you watch it. I've cried like the last 10 episodes, I think. So that says a lot. Also, because we were talking about Black Widow earlier, I'm also a big fan right now of this manga called Spy X Family by Tatsuya Endo. It's a manga. You know the start of Black Widow when like they have a fake family and it's part of a whole spy mission. So the manga is about like the best spy in their country, and for his mission he has to make a fake family, but he doesn't know that the daughter he adopted is actually a telepath, and the person that he entered into a fake marriage with is actually an assassin. So it's like the three of them trying to navigate each other's secrets without really knowing it. And their telepath kid, like she lives for entertainment. She wants her spy dad and her assassin mom to stay together. And it's the most wholesome thing ever. And it's going to be adapted into an anime, I think, next year. So it's a great manga. Please read it. Yay. I will link you guys if you want. It's fantastic.
It's like Mr. and Mrs. Smith, but with like a child involved.
Yeah, and she's a telepath who lives for entertainment. Like she wants her parents to stay together just so she could see all the shenanigans that happen.
That's the life we want to live. Just watching
Just
drama
being
on the
chismosa.
side. Exactly. Don't we wish we have telepathy?
I do, yeah, definitely. Richard.
Grabe lang, no? Like Sub Rock was mentioned, Ted Lasso was mentioned. Fear Street was mentioned. Okay, I guess, well, the movie hasn't shown yet and I'm really excited for it. I guess I'm gonna recommend that you guys wait for it na lang. Although I haven't seen it yet. It's Nicolas Cage's Pig.
Oh, it's the pig.
I've been hearing a lot of hype for it. Everybody, like the premise alone is really dumb, where his pet pig was taken away and he wants to exact revenge on the people who parang takes his
John
pig.
Wick.
It's so good.
It's like I hear it, but it's not like action. There's no gun fu or anything. Like it's a lot more internal and all that. And I wala lang. It's something to look forward to lang because a lot of people have been hyping it up. Nicolas Cage deserves an Oscar for this. The story is really well written.
Damn.
The cinematography is amazing. So I'm excited. I think it's going to be streaming next week. I think I'm not sure, but
Where?
better
watch out.
I don't know. That I'm not sure. I'm every day I'm checking.
It goes from like John Wick premise in the beginning to like Ratatouille at the end. But
What you want?
don't ask. Yes, I have. I've seen it. Don't ask me how it gets there, but it gets there really well, and it's.
I'm so jealous.
It's so. I'll talk.
It's a Wii TV exclusive. Kasi.
Wow.
It's not streaming. It's not streaming as per Decider.
Anyway,
it might
it's great.
be on Hulu.
But yeah, I like
amazing.
Dren is a witness here. Like, do you think Nicolas Cage deserves an Oscar here?
I like. It's kind of weird because the movie's weird, but sure.
Well, as you said, we need a little bit of difference.
Yeah, I wanna point out then that the reason why I alluded to Ratatouille is because the reason why he owns a pig is because he uses the pig to look for truffles because he's a chef.
Yeah.
So
and then in the trailer, there's like some backstory about that he doesn't like his past life or something. I don't know.
Sorry, but
Anyway,
it's really good.
All right. Dren, go ahead.
Yeah, super recommend Pig. It's awesome. Like the premise is so absurd. And of course, it stars Nicolas Cage. You know what I mean? But I guess the series or movie I'd recommend is a series that I discovered because it came from the mind of Michael Schur, who made Brooklyn Nine-Nine and The Good Place.
Yeah.
His new series is called Rutherford Falls, and it stars Ed Helms, and he's the showrunner along with Ed Helms and Native American woman named Sierra Teller or Nellis. I'm not sure if that's how you correctly pronounce it.
Nellis.
Ornelas. And the reason why I say I mentioned that she's Native American is because the show is all about these two characters, Ed Helms' character and another character that is a Native American woman who are essentially fighting over the land that they live on. They're supposedly best friends, and it talks about how like basically how like white people screwed over Native Americans and kind of stole their land. And it obviously does in a very comedic Michael Schur way, but it gets very, very deep into it. And obviously, I don't think any of us here are Native Americans, but the fact that they talk about land grabbing essentially and the idea of um like this kind of more subtle like conquering of a minority is just so interesting to me. And Ed Helms is great in it, even though he's the white guy. I guess if I had to compare it to another Michael Schur show, he plays kind of like the I almost said Andy Serkis. What's his name? Andy in Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Andy Samberg.
Andy Samberg, not Andy Serkis. Andy Samberg in Brooklyn Nine-Nine, where he's the male white protagonist, but his entire role is to learn and to kind of realize that he's wrong.
That's always great.
Yeah, it's just like it's a fantastic show, and it's really like funny and wholesome. Even though it talks about like heavy topics in signature Michael Schur fashion. So and the not it's not a song, it's not like an album or anything, but the thing I want to recommend on the audio side is there's a podcast called The Friendship Onion, hosted by Billy Boyd. Marion Pippin essentially from Lord of the Rings.
Whoa, and Moynihan, what's his name?
What do you call this?
Dominic Monaghan.
Yeah.
Dominic Monaghan. And basically they just mess around in the show. They kind of just talk about whatever, and obviously they talk about Lord of the Rings like 80% of the time. At one point they bring on Elijah Wood and they just kind of talk about the series. And there's
awesome.
As like an avid Lord of the Rings fan, it's like a dream come true, and they talk a lot about like behind the scenes and things like that. And it's really, really wonderful to hear about like how the cast really like bonded and how they really, it's like I love how and all of the Lord of the Rings guys don't mind being most known for Lord of the Rings, and they're like unabashedly proud of it. So if you like Lord of the Rings, if you like just nerdy stuff, and a Scottish guy and a British guy just kind of talking about everything under the sun. If you want to talk about how Dominic Monaghan had a family of rats living in his car, or how Billy Boyd once had diarrhea in Thailand, this is the Friendship Onion. It's pretty amazing. So yeah.
All right. Dren or RJ, go ahead.
Oh yeah. So my recommendation, pop culture stuff I did recently. I am continuing to be late to the party, and actually getting on to playing every single Halo game after not touching them for any of the last 20 years. I am now realizing the pain of all those people who were teabagged in the mid 2000s. Aside from that, just finished my annual rewatch of The Disappearance of Haruhi Suzumiya, which is still my favorite anime movie of all time, which also deals with time travel.
Sorry, what's it called?
Disappearance of Haruhi Suzumiya.
I'll check that out.
And then I also just finished reading the last major Marvel crossover they had, which was King in Black, which ends with Venom killing the dark god of the symbiotes and becoming the new god of the symbiotes after being infused with the powers of Captain Universe. And now he has given away his symbiote to his son.
Okay.
It's a lot of events happening in like one go.
Yeah. But aside from that, Marvel's actually been pretty good. Aside from that, I guess the other thing I'd recommend is continuing on with the X-Men stuff that's been going on. X-Men has been actually continuously been going really good since 2019. So I'm still going to shelve that. Read the X-Men comics.
Awesome. Okay, Prince.
Okay, perfect. Because to end, I barely consumed any much pop culture. Like honestly, because like Loki was the only pop culture I consumed lately. Because most of my weeks, the past few weeks, I was spending all my nights watching the European Championships. All my nights were spent doing that. But my dad got a VPN for that so that we could watch
Yay.
legally, and we enjoyed it so much that he extended it for a whole year, to the point that okay, I'm just gonna use the VPN. So right now, I'm watching on Netflix Australia. I'm watching The Office because I've been meaning to watch it for a long time. So I'm
it's your
finally.
first time.
Yeah, this is my first time because I've been.
Welcome to the Office Club.
I've always wanted to watch because I knew it was good, and I just I really want to watch it, but I want to watch it right, like in the right way. So yeah, and I'm really I'm in season 2, and I'm really having a
That's
lot
where
of fun.
it gets good.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm just enjoying it. But I guess the only recommendation I can have is the Olympics start on Friday, so let's all support our Filipino athletes and whatever country you want to be supporting. If your favorite athlete is competing, watch their games because if it pushes through, it's in Tokyo, so it's pretty much the same time as us, so we don't have to sleep late.
Yeah,
So
an hour
it's
delayed.
good for me. It's good for me as someone who works in the news, and I have to watch all the games, and so I'm gonna enjoy a lot. So for the next 2 weeks, I will be in sports mode again. So pop culture will have to take a backseat muna. But I can't wait to see what happens in Tokyo and what happens after Tokyo.
Yeah.
I did not realize the Olympics was this week.
Surprise!
Right.
It like Black Widow, the Olympics have gone through a lot.
Such a waste of a good logo talaga yung 2020 Olympics na yan. Well. All right.
Last but not a recommendation, Space Jam 2 was kind of...
Oh, yeah, Space Jam!
That's a discussion for like after the podcast.
Loved the animation though, but everything else was...
It was just an IP showcase. That was basically
literally.
But I don't
HBO
care.
Max, the movie.
LeBron James, I love him so much.
As a Hufflepuff.
Oh, the NBA finals are happening, by the way.
Oh yeah.
That is, I
Alright.
need that to finish tomorrow. I need the
know.
Bucks to win.
Oh, Phoenix and 7.
We'll see what happens. We'll see what
Richard, you
happens.
watch basketball?
We just like
That
end the
is
podcast
right.
with us like screaming at each other.
There should be like a sports episode of this podcast.
Oh,
like,
man.
Purns, I think, would like be the best person to like get into
Nakangiti na lang ako the whole time.
The Space Jam episode.
the Space Jam episode.
Oh man.
I only know the Toon Squad. Just kidding.
All right. So that was a very long episode, but very, very fun. So thank you so much, guys, for joining today. I hope I get to see like the same batch of people or more people as we continue on with like more Marvel episodes.
In the
as
next
the
5
year
Marvel episodes.
the next part. Depende. Maybe we can like push some together. You never know. But yeah, wala na ako yung spiel, Cholo. You have to take it from here because I don't remember the spiel for the last part anymore.
So, again, thank you, Paola, for taking over this Marvel episode. And of course, thank you to everyone for joining in our Marvel squad, our Marvel faction, the variants that made it to this episode. And yeah, of course, you can check out all our other Marvel episodes and all our other popcorn episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you stream your podcasts. Of course, we're on radyo-katipunan 87.9 FM every week, thanks to the RK fam. And you can go follow us on social media. That's at Popcorn with Cholo, at Popcorn W Cholo on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And we will all see you next time, variants, for more popcorn and more pop culture. We all see you soon. See you soon, sabi nga ni, he who remains. See you soon.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
See you guys.
Thank you.
This is your stop for all things pop. Catch our all-around pop culture geek, Cholo Sediaren, as he throws in some dose of what's poppin' and what's hot in the pop culture scene here on Popcorn. Munch in with us every Thursdays from 4 to 6, only here on radyo-katipunan 87.9 FM. Radyo-katipunan. News, insights, inspiration.